Welcome back. Today we're reading Chapter 2. Her Dreams Come True. Scarlet stood aside while Charles talked to Cecil Strike. She decided that the big, arrogant, loose-jowled man, known as the King of the Slums, was up to no good. She resented the way he laughed at Charles, and she detected an undertone of triumph in his boastful manner. The man was impossible. I'm going to investigate the interiors of these places myself. I may be able to help Charles, Scarlet decided. She worried about the situation when she went to bed and rolled and tossed for a long time. When she finally did go to sleep, she dreamed. Oh, golly, I'm tired, she yawned when she rolled out of bed the next morning. Whenever I dream, it breaks up my entire night's rest. She yawned and stretched as she started to put on her clothes. She had trouble keeping her eyes open. She rinsed her face in cold water and shook her head. She was still groggy, but something was bothering her. Last night, I dreamed I was driving my car and almost crashed into a huge moving van, she told her reflection in the mirror. Then her eyes widened, for she remembered the dream vividly. She'd been thinking about the King of Slums and the housing projects just before she dozed off. In the dream, she was on her way to investigate the housing conditions. I turned sharply into the side road leading to the park to avoid crashing into the truck, she recalled. I finally came to a stop just 2 feet from the edge of the lagoon. The dream certainly seemed real, but of course, it could never happen. Scarlet finished dressing. She donned her hat and coat and went to the garage for her car. As she pulled out of the driveway, she was still haunted by the dream. Thank goodness it was only a dream, she murmured. I'd be scared stiff if it actually had happened. She drove deeper into town at a leisurely pace, keeping to her own side of the road. A big black sedan was approaching in the stream of oncoming traffic. It's a beautiful day, Scarlet said. Everything is. Oh, she jerked the wheel. A huge moving van going at a terrifically fast pace suddenly pulled out of the line of traffic Scarlet was facing. It seemed to be coming directly toward her. As it loomed closer and closer, crowding her to the curbing, Scarlet swerved the car into a side road. The brakes squealed and screeched. Her coupe hit the boulevard and then seemed to get completely out of control. It hurtled across a stretch of grass and down an embankment. Scarlet clutched the emergency brake with both hands and pulled with all her might. The car came to a shuddering stop on the brink of the deep park lagoon. My dream. This is just what happened in my dream, Scarlet gasped. She sat still, trying to regain control of herself. and struggled to remember what she had started out to do that morning. Then it came to her. She had planned to investigate conditions in the slums and help her architect friend, Charles Dew. She backed the roadster out of the park, ignoring the crowd which had gathered, and once again headed for the King Strikes section of town. Scarlet pulled up in front of the row of tenements and stepped from her car. She pressed a nerve in her left wrist to make herself invisible and entered one of the buildings. As she went up the stairs, she almost twisted her ankle on the rickety, worn stairway. Great Scott! This is dangerous. The wood is rotting away, she cried. She grasped the railing, and it was rough and loose. It came near breaking under her slight pressure. There were nails sticking up from the loose boards in the flooring. She entered one of the apartments. The kitchen door, its window broken, was warped. It stuck, and Scarlet had to push it hard to open it. The plaster along the walls was cracked and broken, and the miserable room was cold and drafty. It's deplorable. How can anyone live in such ruins as this? Scarlet wondered. I should think the health department would forbid the renting of such places, for sanitary reasons alone. She went into the living room. The walls and ceilings were cracked and broken. A little boy was playing in the middle of the room, directly below the chandelier. Scarlet gasped, for right above him was a cracking sound, and the chandelier began to sway back and forth. Scarlet ran toward the child. She reached down and picked him up, getting him out of the way a moment before the chandelier crashed to the floor. At the very spot where the boy had been playing, Scarlet, who was still invisible, put the boy down again as his mother ran into the room. The boy's mother saw the wreckage of the light fixture, picked up the child and cuddled him in her arms. Oh, my baby, I shudder to think what would have happened if that old chandelier had fallen on you. Oh, she cried as she sat down on the rickety old couch. Me too, murmured invisible Scarlet O'Neil softly. She felt as though she would like to put her arms around the young, work-worn mother. She wanted to weep, too, when the other woman sat on the davenport holding the boy, while she looked around the room with despair in her eyes. Tears coursed down the mother's cheeks as she murmured, "If only we could find another place to live. But it's simply hopeless." The boy held his toy wagon in his lap and looked up at his mother hopefully and trustingly. He climbed down and went to the window to watch the neighborhood children on their way to school, while his mother got the broom and began cleaning up the wreckage left on the rug by the smashed chandelier and fallen plaster. I thought that new housing project was going to be built, but I guess they've forgotten all about it, the mother said with a deep sigh. Scarlet watched the pathetic scene and whispered to herself, "Something must be done about this deplorable situation." She went into the other rooms of the building, and it seemed to her that conditions became worse and worse. People are certainly entitled to better living conditions than this. No bathtubs, no hot water facilities, plaster falling off the walls and ceilings, broken windows. Oh heavens, I could go on for hours, Scarlet reflected. She wandered back into the apartment where she had left the boy and his mother. The living room had a big gaping hole where the chandelier had been attached. Plaster and dirt had sifted down onto the rugs and furniture. She went through the kitchen, silently, out the back door. Her foot caught in a loose board, but she was afraid to grasp the rickety porch railing. The screen door was rusted, and the screening was broken and jagged. The steps going down into the courtyard were broken and loose. When she reached the court, she turned back to look at the outside of the building. There were big gaping cracks in the outer walls, and all of the porches sagged dangerously.
The people living in these dilapidated houses are in constant danger,
she thought. She shuddered again when she recalled the near tragedy of the falling chandelier. Suddenly, Scarlet dodged to avoid a shingle which came sailing through the air. A strong windstorm would blow the roofs off, she murmured. Broken windows, loose bricks, warped doors, rotted staircases were all part of the slum scenery. Scarlet became very thoughtful as her eyes took on the horrible details. Charles Dew is a marvelous architect, and he's worked so hard on the plans for a new housing project, she mused. It seems a crime it's not going through.
Charlie blames it all on Mr. Strike, the owner of 80% of the property in this section.
I wonder. Scarlet, determined to make the slum project her own special problem. Join me again next time as we read Chapter 3.
Wild horses.
Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.